Lucky Boys Podcast.
Welcome to Lucky Boys Podcast. I'm Will.
I'm Norm.
And we have a guest today. He is from the New York Police Department, NYPD. What's up, Rob?
What's up, guys? Big fan of the podcast. Glad to be here. Glad to get out of the house for a little bit, you know?
Yeah, get away from the kids.
Yeah, the kids are a lot, you know? It's like a second job, third job.
Oh, man, tell me about
It's like
it.
3 jobs in one. But yeah, it's great to be here. Hope I can contribute something to any discussion that you guys might have, answer any questions.
Well, I'm sure we could tackle a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things going on today. And actually, our previous guests, you know, they touched on some of the policing that's going on, not just for the NYPD, but just throughout America. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on. I mean, obviously, you come from another angle. Most of us are from the outside looking in.
Right.
And, I think it's great that we have you on because we actually have someone that's on the inside. So when you see these clips, video clips, when you see these or read these articles, you have a completely different perspective than a normal civilian would. Am I right? Or,
I mean, I can see where some civilians, I can see why they're disgusted by some of the stuff that's happened. But at the same time, it's sort of like, yes, I do have a different perspective of why it happened or like how things unfolded, because I see it on a daily basis. Like when I'm at work, you can arrive at a situation and it starts out like really just kind of mellow, and it just devolves into like this crazy, nasty situation. And I think the protests are a function, or they're like a result of like some of, I guess, the outrage from some of the stuff, like rightfully so, like with the Derek Chauvin case in Minnesota, where George Floyd died, and he was basically filmed, and he suffocated on live television or video or a medium. So it's pretty startling to watch for anyone, I think. And I think most of us, I like to think all of us actually that are in the profession, we can't really say that he was justified in doing that, because it was unnecessary. It was completely uncalled for, and it's just a difficult situation to be in, because when you look at it, like, okay, the cops responded. Why did they respond? They responded because someone called, right? Mm-hmm. Someone called on him about a fake 20. Mm-hmm. I mean, if that guy didn't call for the fake 20, it might not have happened, and we might not have these protests and this discussion even today. But aftermath, like, you see the video and you just see how it starts off pretty okay. They get him in cuffs, he's okay, and then Chauvin shows up with his partner, and things just kind of escalate. But at the same time, I look at it as a policeman myself, and the footage isn't complete. There's actually a missing portion of it, which it's just kind of hard to account for because it's missing. I mean, like, what do you do with that? Like, so you have this clip of Chauvin and his partner arriving, mm-hmm. and then you see the car arrive and everything, and then there's another angle where you don't really see anything. Then there's another angle where they show that they got Floyd in the car. Mm-hmm. They got Floyd in the car, and then the one of the cops, I forget his name. What the heck was his name? I forget.
The Asian guy?
No, it was the
rookie.
It was one
Lane?
of the
Thomas
Lane?
Lane?
New guys. It wasn't Lane. It was it was the black
so
officer.
The other one, yeah.
I forget his name off the top.
He's
of my
out
head.
on bail right now.
Keurig.
Yeah,
something like that. Keurig.
Kyung.
Yeah.
Yes, Kyung. That's it. So they have Floyd in the car, and then you see him kind of maneuver around the car. It's like, okay, and then after that, you don't really have any more footage until you see Chauvin with his knee on Floyd's neck. So there's like a gap there that no one really talks about. Like, okay, we have this angle where you see Kyung like swing around the car because there's something obviously going on in the car, but people don't discuss that. Like, why would he run to the other side of the car if there's nothing happening? I mean, he does turn back eventually, but obviously, like, Floyd, he's doing something in the back.
It's not debatable that what Chauvin did was to George Floyd was completely inhumane and wrong. That's not even up for debate, right? But I guess you're coming at this from, again, a police officer's mindset, like a detective. You're going, well, what happened to this missing footage? Like, I want to know that piece.
Well, the thing is, like, how does he end up on the ground? Why did they extract him from the car? There's no footage of that.
Now,
that's not being discussed.
Why do you think there's no footage of that? Do you think the police turned off the cams?
I don't think it's because they turned off the cams, because I don't even think they have body cam footage.
All right, I haven't seen any. I just saw the civilian footage and the surveillance footage outside the store.
From just around the area. And, they don't have body cams. And, not all police departments have body cams. And it is what it is. I mean, what are you going to do about it? It's based on staffing levels and budgetary considerations. Right. So, there's that missing footage. Like, how does he get on the ground? Why is he on the ground? Like, we don't know. All we have to go on is like, oh, he resisted. Right. So they put him on the ground, and then Chauvin did what he did. Right. And unfortunately, he lost his life.
Do you think it's, I know it's tough for you to answer, but do you think it's fair to assume that Chauvin and his partner just was pretty damn aggressive and somehow just floored him? Because he seemed pretty respectful in the footage prior. Right. He seemed pretty relaxed. The officers that were approaching him and before Chauvin even got there, everything seemed pretty relaxed. Everything looked like standard operating procedure. Right. Right. And it just didn't seem aggressive at all from any party until we see Chauvin. So maybe that missing footage, maybe they knew there was a blind spot. I mean, if I'm an aggressive police officer, right, and he has a history of it, let's just put it that way. So it's fair to call him pretty aggressive with his history of violence. Okay. And I know that there are certain blind spots where I could get a couple of, inappropriate things in that's unnecessary, and I put him down. I think I can't assume that George Floyd saw that many cops already got the cuffs on him and he's going to do something and act crazy. Right. I really doubt that, because it would have happened already prior. It just doesn't even make sense, right? Unless someone antagonized him. But even so, like, he just didn't seem, he seemed more like, yo, get off, please. Like, it's, right. He never seemed like, F you, get off of me, you SOB. None of that, right? So I would have to assume that he didn't do anything to deserve to be put down like that based on the prior footage. I would have to assume that. Now, in the prior footage, if he was wrestling with the other cops, screaming at them, and somehow the next thing we see is a footage of him being wrestled down and a knee on his back, and then I think people will understand more. But I think that's part of the outrage, is because you see this clip. First of all, the main reason for the outrage is how long he pressed on him for. Right. That's the primary reason. But even the footage, it just gets worse, because when you look at the footage prior, you have to assume that George Floyd was compliant. He wasn't resisting in any way, shape, or form. Right. He was very compliant, and it does not look like he did anything that would justify him end up on the ground, regardless of I just don't see that. Right. And like you said, they're like, just to go on that blind spot part. I don't know if Chauvin knew what was going on around him, if he was aware where the cameras were, right, maybe get some extra licks in or something, right, because apparently he had a history with this guy, George Floyd. But like I said, like, just to go back on that video footage part, where there's like a missing piece where there's just nothing to show how he got on the ground, when they extracted him from the car. Like, that's really the piece that will put everything into proper context, because the way you see it is like, okay, he didn't resist, right? And then somehow he just ends up on the ground. Right. As a police officer, I wouldn't extract someone from the car and put them on the ground for absolutely no reason. Unless you were racist and crazy.
Well, I wouldn't even,
you would look for
I don't want to assume about who Derek Chauvin is, because I don't know him.
He's a veteran cop. He knew he was killing him.
He might have known that he could definitely do a lot of harm to him. But again, like I said, it's it's very hard to really, well, I didn't say this before, but I just want to iterate the point that a lot of times, like when you go to handcuff a subject or to gain control of them, a lot of them will always say, I can't breathe. And
Is that right?
It happens a lot.
Wait, if you handcuff someone, but
If you go to handcuff them and they're on the ground, right? Like on their stomach or whatever. they
without
will
your
al-
knee anywhere.
Without your knee anywhere.
What position are you in
They're
when
j-
you?
We're just like both knees on the ground on their side, and they're in handcuffs, and we're gonna get them up. And it's people will just say like, I can't breathe, because they know that, hey, the cameras are on these cops. Let's just say something like to make it look bad. But the thing is, like, if you do your job properly and you know there's cameras on you, you got nothing to be afraid of.
If you put your knee on anyone's in that position, you for 8 minutes and 46 seconds,
and
you have to assume you're slowly suffocating this guy. Slowly.
And it's not just, one person. It was like 3 people on top of him. So it's sort of like he's already subdued.
Right.
Why aggravate the situation? Or just
Well, I mean, not to defend the other officers, but they did remove themselves from there and try to control the crowd at that point. So, they did what was proper, I think. I think it's very easy in Monday morning quarterback, like what happened.
And I don't know, because it might be that blue wall, right? But I think what's proper would have been for them to go, yo, Derek, like, chill the fuck out, dude.
Yes.
Like, you need to get off of him.
I think
this is you're ODing right now. This is too much.
I think that's a valid point. It is a valid point.
Instead of crowd controlling, like, there's cameras there. Like, that's the best way. Like, that's how I would look out for you. If I'm a police officer, and yeah, I know we're doing Monday morning quarterbacking, but let's just take that situation and you have your knee pressed on someone on Norm's back,
right?
And we have him as a perp, and I'm like, all right, I got your back, man, and we're doing this. But now I see your knee pressed on the back, and I'm probably not going to say anything the first 20, 30 seconds, 'cause we're just trying to get this man under control. And as soon as I hear this guy start complaining, and I'm going, and I see your knee still, your weight is still on him, and then I'm seeing these cameras going out, for our sake, for our police department,
right?
For you as my partner, me having your back is not allowing you to put yourself in a situation where you could be arrested, where you could be charged with murder, where we could create these riots where we're gonna just create this craziness that's going on now. I would come over to you and just say, hey, like, hey, let him go. I would just kind of check on George and just kind of maybe tap you a little bit, like, yo,
hey, it's time,
You're enabling. You're essentially letting Derek do whatever the heck he wants. You're putting, and he's not in his right mind, obviously. And look at all the other officers. He got in trouble.
Right. He got all 3 of them in trouble. I think 2 of them were brand new.
And, and one of them, Thomas Lane was only on the job for 2 days?
Yeah, something like that. He was
2
really,
days?
really new.
And
it was his job, him and Kyung, I believe.
If my second day on any job, and I have a veteran that's been over, he's been over with this company for over 10 years, and he's doing something, and nobody else is saying anything, I'm going to go, okay, is this standard operating procedure? Like, is this... I'm just going to have very low confidence in what to do in certain situations because I never experienced that before, right? Not to say that he was right in not doing anything, but at the same time, it was the second day on the job. So look at what he's done. He cost everyone their lives.
Right. There's a lot of collateral damage as a result.
And other families involved. So not only for just throughout America. So it's just this crazy butterfly effect.
Yeah, I agree. But again, like, here's the thing: like, if they're controlling the crowd, they don't have eyes behind their backs, so they don't really know what's happening sometimes. And you could argue that yes, they were just being ignorant; they just didn't care, or whatever. But I can't say it because I wasn't there, so I can't really go through what was going in their minds. So maybe they thought, oh, okay, so he's a veteran. Like, he's got this under control. He's got his knee. Maybe he'll just extricate himself from this situation. But unfortunately, he didn't. Yeah. So what you have, it just snowballed and, eventually became like a big to-do. People got fired. Jobs were lost. People protest. Stores got destroyed.
And during the worst time, it was like during COVID.
Yeah, during COVID.
Now you got people spreading COVID further. In addition to that, people have pent up energy, and
Right.
they're out saying "F this" at
Yeah.
the height of COVID.
Yeah, and I'm just like, it's flabbergasting to me that like people, I mean, rightfully so, they should be outraged, but at the same time, it's sort of like, Jesus, you guys are like forming like a giant bio ball of death
Coming
like,
towards you.
coming towards
But who was the
everybody.
catalyst?
And it's
Who was
Chauvin.
the catalyst?
But there's also a lot
that
of
may happen, but of course you have to expect that there's going to be a strong public reaction when you see a video like that of a man getting his life slowly taken away.
Of course.
That did not deserve that. And he was a father. He is a father. It just kills me to see something like that. I empathize with that so much.
And regardless of, I mean, like obviously what he done in the past, did he deserve to be like murdered right in front of everyone's eyes?
I think we made that clear.
Yeah,
we all agree that that's wrong. I think Rob is just coming from a detective mindset. Police officer. He just wants to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, look at the full picture.
Yeah.
Right.
Before he extrapolates.
I mean, I spoke to a lot of cops, including you, and they said that what they saw was hands down, undeniable murder.
Yeah, I mean, 8 minutes, 9 minutes? It
8
was
minutes
almost
and 46 seconds.
I mean, that's just pretty crazy. But like I said, there's that missing video piece that doesn't show where George Floyd was extricated from the vehicle for, I guess, maybe resisting inside the car or whatever he was that he was doing. Like, there's no context like provided as to why he was outside the car. Why did it take him out?
Right.
Like, and then the next thing you see is just Chauvin on his neck.
I don't think that there is any reason that would justify
Yeah, you can't justify it.
The aftermath.
Yeah, you can't justify it. And the thing is, like, he should have known better. Like,
as a senior
officer, like, dude, 8-9 minutes, and if you know you're applying force to that degree, you should know.
Yeah,
and he had time to talk to the camera. That's the
crazy part.
That's the craziest part.
Yeah.
He was just so like stuck in his way. He was, I don't know. That was just in like a crazy power trip.
Yeah,
on some. I'm immune to like any type of. I'm above the law.
It's
it's not going to apply to me.
I think that part was the one. That's the thing that really got to me the most as a cop. Like, okay, like when you're filming someone with their knee on someone's neck, right? You don't actually see how much force is being applied. So, and at the same time, even when you're on scene, like let's say you were Keong Lane or even the Tao, I forget his last name. The three officers that were there, they probably didn't know how much force he was applying to his neck either. Because when you look at it, you just see, oh, he's got his neck on his thing, his knee on his neck. Like, I don't know how much force he's applying. You can't see that. You can't gauge it. It's not a video game.
I can tell when someone's in trouble. In a fight. I don't know. I gotta give these people. I can't have these guys claim ignorance like that. I didn't know he was putting that much force. Like, I've seen people fight. I've seen some people get put into headlocks. I've seen different stuff, and I can tell that type of headlock is going to put someone to sleep.
Right. I mean,
that type of hit is going to really do a lot of damage to this person.
And that's all like a function of experience too. Like,
right. Those guys are grown men.
You had two
on the force.
You had two inexperienced officers, and the Hmong officer, Tao.
Right.
He was there too. But I mean, yes, maybe you could have been able to discern whether or not this guy was in like some sort of George Floyd,
right.
Not this guy, but you could probably discern like if he was in distress. But at the same time, it's sort of like, okay, well, a lot of people say I can't breathe all the time too.
Let's just put another predicament. If I'm crowd controlling and after a couple of minutes go by, I still hear this dude saying I can't breathe, and I turn around real quick just to check on you, and I still see you pressed up against this guy, I'm just going to, after 5 minutes, after 6 minutes, at what point should I jump in?
What I'm saying is like, you could definitively say that Chauvin was in the wrong, or if George Floyd was resisting. But even if he was resisting, like you said, like you just don't do that. It's just
so. What's that energy like now in the NYPD?
I mean, it's just made the job a lot harder. I think every time something like this happens, it just seems like it happens in like multiple cases in a span of like a couple months, and then the protests just happen like as a result. But I feel like the energy, it's just sort of, I don't think it's changed the way we do our jobs, although people probably would say, oh yeah, well, they're not doing anything. But they say that regardless of what we do on a daily basis anyway. So it's sort of, we're used to it already. So, I mean, people just have low expectations now, I think. But the energy,
you said lower expectations?
They had low expectations of us.
It's always been there.
It's always been like that, I think. I think it's always been, it's always been sort of like a love-hate relationship.
When you joined the force, did you have to wear body cameras?
No, we actually didn't have body cameras. Like they came way after I had a couple years on, 3 years, 4 years on. Okay. Then the cameras came out. So yeah, the cameras are a function of creating more transparency. Mm-hmm.
And it's to protect the civilian and yourself.
It's to protect both of us. You could view it's good and bad on both sides.
How so?
Like the thing is, like here's the body cam. Like, so I'll just go into the Atlanta Rayshard Brooks incident now. So you have these cops, they're on body camera, right?
Yeah.
They're filming the whole situation. It starts off cordial. And this is good and it's bad because it shows like, hey, these officers were doing their job the right way. They addressed him as a gentleman. They didn't prejudge him based on what he was doing. And you have the context that they were responding to a 911 call about a guy that was sitting in his car blocking a driving lane at the Wendy's. So you have all these contextual, all this contextual information, and you see it on the camera, like the interaction, the breathalyzer. You see everything. Like everything's caught, with the exception of, I guess, the shooting itself,
right? And
where the taser gets unholstered, or actually unholstered and then taken from one of the officers. So you see,
then he makes a run for it, and he tries to shoot the taser, but it it wasn't loaded, or was it?
It's loaded. So
but somehow it didn't.
The officer unholstered the taser, and this is as far as I know. So maybe I don't have it correct, so I'm not going to tell you I'm God and I know everything. But you know, it goes like this: like the officer unholstered his weapon. Brooks decides to take the weapon, so you know it has a cartridge in there. It's a deadly weapon at that point. But it's always been a deadly weapon,
right? But no shots was. No, the taser didn't actually.
I believe he turned around and fired one shot.
He tried to. I heard that it wasn't.
Yeah, because you have to. There's a fail safe or a safety that you have to activate. So if you don't know how to use a taser, you're not going to be able to deploy it.
Do you think it's justified to use deadly force at that point?
I think here's how it is. Like in Georgia law, under the penal law, a conducted energy weapon like a taser, it is considered a deadly weapon, right? So, okay, say I'm the cop. I'm chasing after Mr. Brooks. I tell him to stop. He's not stopping. He turns around and he points the taser at me.
Yeah.
I have a split second to decide, because if he tases me successfully, I'm disabled. Pursuit ends. I'm disabled. Where's my partner? I don't know where he is. Like, right. I don't necessarily know if he's behind me because, you know, I don't know. Because in the heat of the moment, you're not really thinking about it. You kind of have tunnel vision sometimes. So I'm chasing this guy. He points a gun at me, or a taser at me, which is considered a deadly weapon. I can meet it with deadly force. And that's exactly what happened. So he pointed the gun back. He pointed the taser back, and the officer shot him. That's a justified shooting. Like, the fact that they arrested him, I think it's sort of political.
If it was right, if it's justified, they arrested him and they also fired him from the department. Yeah, or did they ask him, or is he on paid administrative leave? Or
one of them is
or not.
One of them is on administrative leave, I believe.
The one that did not fire his partner.
Yeah, Brosnan, I believe.
Right. And the other one.
But he's getting charged too. And then the Officer Rolfe, he's the one that's getting charged with murder and like all these other counts of like assault and whatever else.
Right.
And I'm just like, they're politicizing it because this officer, he did what was right. That's in that situation. Who else would do something like what would you ask him to do? Take that taser shot in the chest, get disabled, and then
the Shaw Brooks might do something.
Yeah, you don't know that.
You don't know.
And the whole crazy thing is that like people like there's an article in USA Today from like they got commentary from people like and just random lay people, civilians. They're mentioning like, oh, he was drunk. Yes, he was drunk, but they could have just let him go. But here's the thing. If you let him go, let's say you let him go. He kills somebody.
You're putting a drunk person back in behind a wheel.
Yeah, you're putting him back behind the wheel. But, you could have escorted him.
Right.
I'm going to take the car keys for this guy.
Here's the thing. Did he really need to be arrested?
I mean, he's a public safety issue at that point. He's drunk. If you take him home, if you drive him home, you let him go, he's liable to just go back out there and do something later. So policing is preventative, right? It's reactive and it's preventative at the same time. And it's just you can't really let someone that's drunk you can't just let them go like that. Oh, I'm just gonna let you sleep it off, you can go home, go to your sister's place, or I'll take you home, I'll drive the car.
What's a police officer supposed to do in a situation like that? Do you think, I mean, a lot of talks has been talking about how police officers are undertrained for several situations where they resort to gun violence or deadly violence so fast. They're so quick that there's been talks about police officers just being, or the way the public perceives them, is that they're trigger happy, especially in major metropolitan areas, specifically New York, LA, San Francisco, right? And they're saying, I mean, these police officers have a bad rap throughout America. Do you think part of it is because of the training?
Well, just to finish my point about Rayshard Brooks, it's just you can't really just let him go. Like if that was in New York, you can't let him go. And just to go back to that original question of whether or not body cams are good or bad.
Right.
In this instance, it's good. And it's also bad because it's good because it captures the whole incident. Mm-hmm. It's bad because, okay, let's say they let Rayshard Brooks go. Mm-hmm. Guess who's reviewing that camera footage? The supervisors, the civilians, the cops, the higher ups. They're reviewing it to see if you did your job properly. And they're going to say, you didn't do your job.
The body cam,
and yes,
the shooting, the deadly force, and the training. It's all tied together in the same conversation.
It's all tied together. And in this instance, I personally feel the shooting's justified because you met deadly force with deadly force. That's part of the training. Mm-hmm. It's a deadly weapon pointed at you.
So I actually read something different, and I mean, I might be the source might be incorrect. Mm-hmm. But I heard that the weapon, the taser that Rayshard Brooks took, was actually empty. So the I guess the cartridges were already shot, and he
by who? Rayshard Brooks, or just by the police officer?
By the police officer before he
previously.
So
he just didn't reload. He never reloaded.
So the tussle happened, and then he took the taser, an empty taser, and apparently one of the officers knew, or both. I don't know. But that's the article that I read. So
well, I don't know what article that is, so I can't really comment as to the validity of it. But a taser is a projectile weapon, right? Mm-hmm. It has, I'll just describe it to you. It has two cartridges. One is, a backup cartridge, and one is whatever. It's already in.
It's ready to go.
It's loaded. It's ready to go. Mm-hmm. What officer in their right mind would unload a taser at close range? It's a projectile weapon. Mm-hmm. You need range for it to work. Right. You can't tase someone with a taser cartridge in close quarters. It doesn't work because the prongs that discharge an electrical current would not go. It just doesn't work.
It'll just bounce off.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it would even bounce off. It's just that there's nowhere for it to go. Really, it's just gonna.
It hasn't developed enough momentum to.
It's not even the momentum. It's like the prongs deploy in a certain way at a certain arc, and they hit certain points of the body. Mm-hmm. So without getting into the technical details of it, just doesn't work at close range. Mm-hmm. Like the way.
So what range? Like it 6 feet.
6, 10, 15 feet.
That's ideal.
Ideally that would be.
I just want to know if I'm ever close to a police officer with a taser, so I should go closer.
Really close. Damn.
Well, hopefully you never get into that situation. But yeah, a taser, when you have it in close quarters, you're gonna take that cartridge out and you're gonna use it in a different manner. So it's not discharged unless, as far as I know, I don't think it was discharged in that incident. And from what I understand, it was Officer Brosnan's taser that he unholstered and which Rayshard Brooks grabbed. Mm-hmm. So if he just unholstered it, it would have the cartridge in it.
And he
You know what I
didn't-
mean?
and then
Or maybe he forgot to
release it.
reload his
But-
cartridges.
But again, I
I
mean,
mean,
no, it's
again, I don't know how valid the article is that you read, but I mean, if that's true, that it was,
I
empty,
think it was like Newsday.
they,
Or
you can't
or
go out.
CNN or something.
I mean, I don't know how they do it in Atlanta, so I can't comment. But the way the tasers work is that they're always loaded. You can't go out with an unloaded taser in your holster because
so
first
you
of all,
do a check before you go out on a beat.
yeah, you gotta make sure the taser works.
I mean, and
It's
yeah,
functional, charged, all that
and
stuff.
you can only shoot it twice. I mean,
Yeah,
means
there's a
it's
maximum-
Preloaded, it's preloaded. So
yeah,
Yeah,
once,
if I'm going to war, I'm
once
going to make
loaded.
sure that everything's there.
You'd be crazy to go out with an empty taser.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
so
that's-
too.
or you have to load it.
But I don't know. I don't know how
yeah.
they work.
But you know, like in this situation,
So,
like,
but again,
it's
like,
just-
how does that tie into training now? Like, because
okay,
a lot. I mean, there's public outrage on that specific story with Rashard Brooks, and most people outside of the box think that there was a way to stop that such situation before even gone to that level. And it goes back to the training. Do you feel that there's a way to train police officers so that they're better equipped to handle unusual situations like that? Unusual situations.
oh,
I mean, it's so hard because police officers, there's just so many different things.
my thing is it's you can train all you want, but it's not always going to happen exactly the way you practiced. And out in the field, stuff goes downhill real fast. Like with Rayshard Brooks, like you saw him, he was complying, and all of a sudden he just makes a beeline for it.
Right.
Like they train you for that, but okay,
I mean, in that situation, what are you supposed to do? Like, you
well you
said
can
train
pursue,
him. Okay.
you pursue, like, and you try to get him to stop through nonviolent means.
Mm-hmm.
Or like minimal physical force, but they tackled him to the floor, right?
Mhm.
They tackled him to the floor, and then he resisted. Like you have to overcome that resistance, and yes, our training teaches us how to overcome that resistance. But at the same time, like sometimes these people that you're wrestling, they're just like obscenely strong. Like you could wrestle like a 110-pound kid,
Mhm.
and they just have this freaking crazy strength.
Well,
like,
that's because in their mind, they're fighting for their lives.
I mean, yeah,
They're
we're
not trying to. So
it's
if
not like we
if
aren't
your-
either.
If your back's against the wall, you're going to give everything you got.
But that's what I'm saying.
And
like,
adrenaline.
yeah, but that's
so
what
it
I'm
puts
saying,
you guys
like,
in a tough situation.
we have to overcome that resistance, and you know, like you don't want to apply too much force. At the same time, you need to gain his hands and compliance. So how do you do that, like without you know potentially hurting somebody?
So do you feel?
You can't.
Do you feel? Well, again,
It's
it goes
very hard
back.
to.
It goes back to
Especially-
training, right? If police officers were training in, for example, mixed martial arts, or if they had some form of jujitsu background,
Right, and there are
They'll-
cops like that.
yeah, they'll be able to easily use someone else's force against them.
You can't use submissions.
Yeah,
At
You
all.
can't use submissions.
can't-
Well, no,
I
they
mean,
wouldn't.
you're-
Yeah, they're
you're-
not submission.
submissions, no
But what I
chokeholds,
mean,
anything.
yeah, I'm not saying like submission holds and make them tap out and stuff, but I'm saying just to get them to a point because a lot of these people, I mean, a lot of people don't know how to fight, right? They just use energy, they go wild, right? And they'll know how to control their bodies and be patient
Right.
and just kind of work with them and then let them run their course and then know the good time to really apply the cuffs and all that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a police officer, but I would have to imagine I would feel much more confident if I had a jiu-jitsu background or some form of mixed martial arts where if I had to tussle or wrestle with someone and calm them down physically without applying too much pressure, I'll kill this person. Because that's the thing. People that aren't trained, if someone else is going 100, you feel like you have to match that 100 or go beyond that so that you don't lose this fight. Like you said, they're using force on me. How dare them? I need to survive this. I need to apprehend this bad guy. So I have to do everything I can to stop them, right? Whether it's beat them with a baton, taser them, shoot them. But a lot of the situations, they feel if there was better training, it won't even have to escalate to that level.
It doesn't matter like how much training you have, because those situations will always put you in some sort of like weird bind where you have to overcome that resistance. So yes, you can be like a total expert at like like arm
BJJ.
holds or
Mm-hmm.
jujitsu. I mean, ideally speaking, you don't ever want to be on the ground. Like
Mhm.
as a cop,
True.
you do not want to be on the ground because that's where things get really murky for you. So BJJ, it would not work. It's not practical.
Really?
It's not practical because you can't choke somebody, right? Like you said,
Right.
you can use a bunch of holds,
Right.
like, but you're restricted. You can't choke somebody. Like a lot of the maneuvers in BJJ, would you say that they're
Submissions.
Submission
to
holds,
cut
yeah.
off breathing?
Right.
A lot of them triangle chokes,
Right.
rear
Right.
naked choke, whatever it is that you want to talk about. Like a lot of these consist of taking the air out of someone's windpipe,
Right.
And also,
and you can't use that.
And also
Right,
thinking,
but
also
just
thinking
but
about
just
it.
now you-
reformatting some of that, like you could get control of their arms,
You have to get
Their
control
legs.
first.
right, their bodies, without, because a lot of times you can do all that. You can, that's the end move, right? It's to get them in a submission, for them to tap out when you're in a combat, but a lot of the times you're under control. If you look at these MMA fighters, they're in control, complete domination without having the other person submit.
Right.
They're trying to because the other person won't let them, but they're still controlling their body and they can't move. They know how to just use their force against them. I think that it should be, personally, I think police officers, number one, I think police officers should be paid more for what they do for several reasons. And we could dig into that later in the conversation. But because you said the starting pay for the NYPD officers is $42,000, which is
Right, first year, and
which is fucking crazy.
so we'll go
but
deeper into
that's
that,
one.
yeah.
But two, I mean, $42,000 in 2020 is absolutely insane, and you're risking your life. And when you start as a police officer, they immediately put you right on the street in one of the worst neighborhoods.
Sometimes,
Right?
yes, it really depends. They've
Right.
changed it, but
So
you know.
another thing is, if I think some form of martial arts, real world combat training should be taught to police officers.
And we do get that training at
You do.
at the academy. Yes, we do
Yeah.
get compliance training, like how to fight in a situation, or like how to work yourself on the ground. The thing is, like, you have 6 months in the academy. Like, you're not going to become like a black belt in
Right. It
in
takes,
anything.
It takes
like
a long time.
you're gonna have to pay for your own training, and at the same time, you have to think about it. Like, cops are normal people too. We're fathers, we're sons, we're daughters, we're mothers, we're somebody something, and it's a tiring job. And when you work a lot of overtime, sometimes you don't have the time to allocate to that training, much less have the funds to do it. Like you said, like the starting salary when you're beginning, it's obscenely low for what you want to do. And we'll go deeper into that and how it's kind of messed up, like that people expect us to have things like malpractice insurance. Like that stuff is just insane. Like,
I know you were telling me that before the
Yeah.
podcast that you read a comment
Yeah.
from one of our viewers that
Chow Liang or Chow something.
But then again, I don't think it's, I mean, what they say makes sense to them. However, I mean, it also could make sense to someone like me because
Yes.
I'm from the outside. I don't think they're stupid or they like whatever. I think they have good intentions, and it's not because they want to see police officers suffer either. I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of it's because we're from the outside looking in.
They
Right.
probably don't
Right.
have all that information
Right.
to
And-
make that assessment.
Right. And we're just trying to come up with something how we can proceed better. I don't think it's always I think most people speaking up, I don't think it's all just evil or like, oh, F you guys. I don't think that's the majority. It may seem like that because those voices appear to be louder.
right.
Right. But I don't think that's the case. I think the majority want the police around. Right. I think the majority wants better training. I think they want to feel safe around police. I think they want some harmony with neighborhoods and police officers. And I think police officers want the same thing. I don't think they want to constantly go to war with with everybody. Like you said, they're people too.
Yeah.
They don't want to constantly have to watch their back.
Right.
But it's a situation where you need to. So that said, do you think that police pay, training, all of that needs to be dramatically improved? Is that what's causing it?
It's a very complicated issue because there's money involved as well. Like, people don't realize training, like all this stuff costs money. But just to finish up the whole training aspect, before I delve deeper into the pay issue and like all that stuff being interrelated, training is, you get it at the academy, but you're expected, it's not mandated that you have to have like some sort of mixed martial art background. It helps, but you're going to have to go and do it on your own. And, like I said, a lot of people have lives outside of police work, and it's not always possible. It's not always financially possible either. So now you got this situation, and now we're going to jump into the financial part of it. You're paying cops $42,000 a year starting out, and then this is NYPD, of course.
Right.
So you're starting out with $42,000, and for the first like 5 years, you're getting $1,000 raises. $1,000 raises until you hit 5 years.
That's crazy.
Think about that for a second.
On a bright side, after 15 years, you can retire.
No, actually,
right?
no. It's 22 and a half now. If you want to retire...
Wait, as coming in as a cop, like since when?
Coming in as a cop now, it's 22 and a half years now.
As of when? 2019? 2018?
It's been 22 and a half for a while now. Like when they changed the...
So for you, is it 15 or is it 22 and a half?
No, there's never been a 15. It was 20 previously for like the older cops.
So
if they joined like prior to, I don't even know, like the early 2000s,
right,
they could retire in 20 years. And don't quote me on that, but like I believe that's where it stopped. And then they created like a new pay tier or benefits tier or whatever for guys like me that came on a little later. So, and then the new guys that are even newer than me, they're on that $40,000 with $1,000 increases pay tier. You can't live like that and then expect cops to spend money on their training. Like, yes, it's a funding issue. Like NYPD could provide the training, but at the same time, you have these forces, political forces, and people clamoring for us to use more non-lethal methods and to hold us more accountable for our actions through transparent things. So we have to allocate funding for body cameras. We have to allocate funding for tasers because of what happened to emotionally disturbed lady in the Bronx. Sergeant shot her, because she was coming at him with a bat. So now you have to allocate money to like shields.
Lawsuits. Yeah, that's what Lex was alluding to in our previous podcast, that he's for defunding the police.
Right.
And he's all about leading to that case. And when he says defund, not to completely strip you of everything, but just in areas where, like you were talking about, having your own insurance.
Right.
That way it doesn't come out from taxpayer money.
Right.
And that way it'll hold you guys more accountable for when you do something that's out of pocket, that would result in some lawsuit.
And all these things cost money.
Because he said something about there was like $1 billion worth of lawsuits.
Well, I don't know the exact figure because I don't need to know it. It's not my job to know what that figure is. That's something else.
Wouldn't you agree? It
is an astronomical number, but everybody has a rainy day fund, right? Stuff is going to happen eventually. Someone's going to get sued. Something's going to get settled. Someone's going to get paid out. It's just the nature of the game. It comes with the territory.
And let's just say you were able to reduce the lawsuit by 20%. You were able to make adjustments, and now your rainy day fund, it's $800 million instead of $1 billion. So there's $200 million more of extra cash. Would they be able to use that and bring it back to training, into paying you guys a better salary so that you guys are more well equipped, and maybe pay more officers so that you're not so strapped in overtime all the time, right?
Okay.
So number one, give you a better pay salary off the bat. Number two, invest in your training, perhaps pay for you guys. Because then at $42,000, it's a really tight lifestyle. Yeah. It's a really tight lifestyle. Right? You have to be extremely frugal. And so
download all the apps for coupons.
Do you think that that's possible?
I think in that's like a really hypothetical type of situation. Like we can work the numbers any which way we want, but the fact of the matter is, like, yeah, you can this $1 billion, this number that's been thrown around. Yes, you could theoretically, if you get less lawsuits, you could use that for more training. But if you use that to train officers on job time, right? Let's say, okay, now we have this 200 million, like you said, that we saved, or whatever number it was. And you use that to give officers on-job training, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're taking that officer off patrol.
Mm-hmm.
So how you need to reconcile that with what the needs of the precinct are at that point, because you need officers on patrol,
Hire more officers.
but you can't hire
Yeah,
more
that-
officers. That's the
Why not?
problem. Like,
Why not?
people don't want more officers. It's
they
a really
would, they would if
we've actually been, like, here's the honest truth. Like, we actually have less officers on patrol now
Mhm.
because of these transparency requirements that the public are making from us. So with the body cams, right? For example, you had to create a whole division to review all this body cam footage.
Mhm.
You have civilians doing that, and you have uniformed members doing that. Those are cops off patrol. That's cops off patrol. That means less cops. The number hasn't increased for cops.
But you have to.
Much.
But you have to address the training. Look, anybody that works in pharmaceutical, anyone who's a doctor, anyone who's in any part of this era, the world changes so fast. That's just part of the monster. If you're not changing, you're being left behind.
Right.
All right. And you cannot keep forcing the old ways. It just doesn't work. You have to evolve and change with the times. Any company that does not do that, it doesn't survive. Blockbuster, perfect example, right? They didn't even take Netflix seriously. Yahoo, same thing. They didn't take Google seriously, right? Every company that's successful today that was several decades ago is because they was able to shift and grow their business and change with the times. I think for the police department throughout America to have a higher morale boost within the force and to have a better public perceptions, they need to change something. There needs to be big changes that'll make your jobs easier. But at the same time, we need to increase standards. We can't have the old ways. We can't bring 1970s, 1960 policing style into the year 2020. I don't think it works.
Okay.
Body cam, I like the idea of it. I mean, we're moving into a more digital area. Whether you like it or not, the world's changing. We have to change along with it. I don't think having less police officers are a good thing. I disagree with that. So whoever's saying that,
But
when you need the police, that's a whole nother story. But I do believe that police officers, I think $42,000 is ridiculous. With $1,000, you're making less than $50,000 a year for the next 5 years. What's the incentive for the police officer not to take a bribe somewhere, right? If someone's on a borderline and they're making life and death situations with their family, and somebody offers them a little thing under the table, that's a whole nother separate thing. But I don't believe that coming up with, our hands are tied and that's it. And I mean, if you got $1 billion for lawsuits, then I would say whoever's in charge, find a way to enforce some standards where these lawsuits, where we can reduce them at least by a certain percentage, reallocate some funds and put it somewhere else. Think of it like how, if you just look at it from a business perspective, right? A business perspective, we would look at where are we spending money where we don't need to? Where can we cut costs so we can reallocate this that's not helpful, bring it over here, which will make our company better. So how do we take this budget here, decrease this because we don't need it as much anymore, bring it over here, reinvest back into the company, back into the infrastructure, back into the police officers, but in all the best ways. Maybe police officers need some psychologists, right? Somebody to help them through all that stuff, because there's also suicides that's I hear going on in force.
Right.
Training on the clock, right? And also it'll help them be more confident. I mean, like just me going out for a run, working out, I feel good about myself. And a lot of these police officers, if they're not working out, they're just is another day at the fucking job. I mean, it's terrible. As soon as you go out and you wear that uniform, it's you against the world. And the only person that's got your back is the other boys in blue. I get it. I get that mentality. But I don't think it's right. I think we need to kind of change that. I think we need to change the whole system. How we treat our police officers, how we train them, how we pay them. And therefore, and also the standards that they have with the public, I think we need to change.
Right. I think a holistic approach to revamping everything is necessary. Like it's
super necessary.
Yeah, it's public perception, and it's also departmental as well. Now, I'm not going to say that we haven't been getting any training, because NYPD has evolved with the times.
Do you get ongoing training?
So we do get ongoing training. We get requalified for weapons all the time. We get training for de-escalation tactics, active shooting scenarios. So we get all this training. We do get training, and we get refreshers in, you know, tactical combat situations, stuff like that.
Okay.
So it's not to say that we don't get any training and that we aren't evolving with the times by enhancing like our capabilities, you know, either with digital phones, like to do our job more efficiently and all that. But you know, it's just a lot of things that you have to do in order to really reform like things to the point where people are satisfied. And I think in general, people are never fully satisfied.
But that doesn't shouldn't be a reason to.
It's not a reason, no,
to be paralyzed and say, well, we're not going to do it because they're never going to be satisfied anyway. And it's not. And it's not just to satisfy the public. That's for the politicians to worry about. I'm talking about just having better policing.
Right. I mean,
right. Just fix what you got within your department, and then make that standard throughout. And I'm not saying I'm not saying anything about defunding. I'm not saying anything about taking away the police's power, because at the same time, I don't think it's fair that police officers should fight crime with one hand behind their back or two hands. I was just saying that in a previous podcast.
I saw that one.
Yeah, you can't have police officers fight crime like that. You know, you need to give them everything they need to do their job. Just like in any company that equip their staff to, whether they're sales reps or their customer service department, they equip them with the tools and the technology to do their job the most efficiently that they can. And I think police officers, I don't think it's ever bad to reinvest in your team. So if in this case, your soldiers, the police officers out on a beat, the guys that are on the front line, I think they should invest in them heavily.
Right. And you know,
psychologically,
we'll just stay
emotionally,
we'll stay away from that phrase of soldiers, because I know it's very politicized. People think we're a militia or something. But
I do see some police Hummers, man. Well, I'll take you.
There are some. I mean, but they're not going to be
the gear that they rock.
Some military gear. I do see it locally.
That's not the norm. So you know, that's like a specialized unit. But in any case, yes, I do believe that reinvesting in personnel is like vital, and I think NYPD is doing that. It might not be at the speed that the public is satisfied with, because it's such a huge department, and there are a lot of people that you have to train. And like I said, you have to take, if you're training people on job time, you're taking them off patrol, and you have to reconcile all that. It's not easy to do, especially.
So why is it so slow? I mean, do you feel like, because the public feels like they're dragging their feet on this?
The public always feels like we're dragging our feet on everything. Right. Like it's like when you get in a car accident, it's like, oh man, the cops 2 hours not here yet.
So who? That's pretty terrible. 2 hours, man.
But yeah, so
you're dragging your feet, bro.
But actually, they respond really quickly to car accidents.
It's situational, because it really depends on where you had the car crash, what's going on in the precinct. If you have a heavy job, you're not gonna be able to get the car accident. Come on, let's be realistic. People don't see it that way, of course. They're just like, oh man, these guys are so slow.
Yeah, it's my situation. It's me.
Yeah, it's selfish.
No, come on, 2 hours. That's a long time. Bro.
Yeah, 2 hours is a long time.
If I got in a car accident with a stranger,
I'm waiting,
and we're both waiting.
We had the count for traffic too.
And
right?
Officer Rob didn't show up yet. You know what? I'm just gonna be like, yo, you want to just watch some Netflix together till they come? Like. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. That's 2 hours is a long time, man.
It's crazy. I mean,
I'm already stressed out, man. My damn car got all messed up.
But you have to realize,
I gotta wait 2 hours to report this just so my insurance could clean this. Like it's nuts.
But then again, like I said, like it's all a matter of like how you allocate personnel. Like if you don't have the personnel to respond to all these jobs, especially when they're all hitting you at once, it's very tough. And then when you're taking people off for training, on job training, it's very tough too. So it's a very complex issue. I think like when we simplify it, it's just, yeah, you can talk about solutions like all day long, like they're really easy to implement, but they're not that easy to implement. I don't think
they're easy to implement. I don't think anyone thinks it's easy to implement, but we need to implement some of these ideas. So some of these ideas are a must have.
Right. So just to touch on the funding or monetary part, where we're talking about salary and training and all of that, just to wrap it all together, I guess. Like, so you have these people that are calling for us to, you know, to defund us, right? They want to defund us and allocate resources in other ways, or they want us to have like malpractice insurance so that the city doesn't have to pay out for, I guess incidents where we have to exercise physicality or deadly force. So, okay, let me just address the defunding portion first. So the defunding portion, if you allocate resources, okay, let's say you take money away from the police and then you strip them of their ability to answer, you know, car accidents or emotionally disturbed person jobs or domestic violence incidents. Who are you paying exactly? Like, here's my question. You want to pay these professionals to do the job, but how are you going to allocate these professionals out in the field? Are you going to put them in part of a team with the cops, or are you going to send them out on their own? Are you going to give them weapons training? Are you going to give them tactical training? Are you going to give them a vehicle? There's all these considerations that people don't take into account. Like, okay, let's say you send them out on their own. You send out a social worker to a social worker or whatever it is, to a domestic violence job. It goes south. Mm-hmm. What's to stop that group of people from just wrecking that social worker?
They're not
or
trained.
holding them
They're not
hostage
trained.
Or if
held
it's a
hostage.
situation where they need to de-escalate
Right.
or make an arrest.
Right. And
Or
people,
if there's a witness and then they're not trained for any of it. They're just trained to
talk.
Mm-hmm. And I talked about that in the last
you
podcast.
touched upon it.
And I also, I don't agree with that at all, because I've seen situations where you need, like, things go south really fast,
Right.
really
Second,
fast.
yeah.
And if you have a social worker there with no weapons, no training, nothing, they become a statistic real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's not forget, like, this is some of this, like, street life, and a lot of these people that get hired. Let's say I'm a social worker. Would I want to be that guy that gets that call that needs to go into this high crime neighborhood without any police officers having my back, and I need to go there, like, just nothing, just like regular person, just to talk to this guy?
Hey,
and then these two people are fighting and arguing, and I can't referee this, and now things are escalating, and now I'm just part of this bubble of energy of negativity, and now they're just aiming at me just because I'm here.
Yeah. And that's a very specific type of scenario.
Police officer, but let me tell you, that could become a norm. I mean, we're in New York here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we're in New York here.
People take advantage of any situation.
Yeah, and you know, like, that's the question.
Strangers get hit.
These are the questions.
Around the wrong time.
No one wants to address these questions. No one even brings up these questions. I think, like, you brought it up in the last podcast,
right.
But these politicians, these guys that are saying, like, defund the police and reallocate resources to professionals to do some of the jobs they handle now, They haven't answered these questions. How do you pay these people? Are you going to give them hazard pay? Are you going to give them a weapon? Again, are you going to give them a body cam? If you're going to send them out there on their own, how are they going to protect themselves? How are they going to raise up the police when they need the police to help them in a situation where things are going south? Are you going to put these social workers, these professionals with the cops as part of a 3-man team in a patrol car? Or are you just going to keep them, like, in the precinct until they're needed to come over? How efficient is that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to be sitting around until they're needed.
Well, instead of hiring additional personnel, why not train police force with the necessary tools and the knowledge of?
Well, here's the thing, Norm.
to de-escalate.
All right, so that's a valid question, and we do get training on this. Mm-hmm. We do get training. It might not be, like, as complete as people want it to be, but we do get this training, like hands-on scenarios. You know, besides just, like, you know, the book stuff, obviously. And you know, a lot of it is just common sense as well. Hopefully I would say most people have it. But these are things that you can't just keep saying, oh, train them, put them in training, because all of this training takes time away from patrol, and it also costs more as well. If you have cops going through, like, a year-long academy, a 2-year-long academy, like, that's a huge investment for the city. Like, the city thinks about things in terms of numbers.
And I understand there's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of money involved and a lot of decision making. And I think a lot of the times that can hold up the process.
Yes, and it's very bureaucratic. And I'm not going to really I don't know enough about it to really speak about it.
Who should we aim at then? Who should, like, there's, so obviously we have the public here, we have the police officers here, right? And obviously in this whole thing, what the public wants and what the police officer public needs, wants, there's somebody here that's dragging their feet or whatnot. There's a decision maker here that's going to go, okay, yes for the public what they want, or yes for the public. So who is it? The politicians? Is it like who's the one that's
who's
going?
The CEO?
Who's the one that's going to greenlight all this stuff for the police officers, for the public? Like who's that guy?
The politicians are responsible. We don't. They're the ones that ultimately decide where money goes. It's sort of like, okay, if you want to defund us, you want to take away like traffic stops. I mean, not traffic stops. Car accidents. You want to take away emotionally disturbed persons' jobs from us. Are you going to form like another separate entity that acts like the police but isn't the police to do those jobs, to respond, to back up like EMS at like an EDP job, like stuff like that?
I
like,
get that.
How do you do that?
And I think
that creates a whole set of other problems too.
Are on mutual ground there. I think. What do you think about having a group that polices the police?
You mean like IAB, Internal Affairs?
But more
third party, kind of don't have a connection.
We have something like that.
Independent commission.
Well, we have the Civilian Complaint Review Board that reviews misconduct and allegations of excessive force or foul language, all that stuff. We have Internal Affairs. And then we also have like the units that are watching our body cam. So we're already under like a lot of scrutiny. We do get evaluated. Our sergeants evaluate us out in patrol. Like, I think what people want is it's almost impractical. They want us to be like, I read one comment by this guy named X2 on one of your podcasts. He's like saying, oh, we should be held accountable like doctors and teachers who do more with less every day. And I'm just like, you can't really compare like that type of, it's comparing apples to oranges, because let's say you compare us to doctors who he's saying is doing more with less, right? I can't think of a single incident before COVID-19 where people were saying doctors they're constantly handcuffed with their hands behind their back doing their jobs. I've never heard that before COVID-19, where they were saying, oh, we got to do more with less personnel and supplies. We're flying in doctors. This is the only time I've ever heard that. So that's the apples to oranges comparison. And then he talks about, oh, well, teachers do more with less every day. All right, so let me break it down for him, like right here in this podcast. Like, the NYPD has a budget of nearly $6 billion, right? Mm-hmm. With 38,000 cops, right? The Board of Education has 75,000 teachers, and they have a budget of $24 billion. That's 4 times more than what we have. The NYPD polices 9 million people. Teachers teach on an average of like 1 teacher to 13 students.
No way. 1 to 13 students.
It's not true, but in any case,
no way. That's amazing.
My point is,
classrooms are well beyond that.
Right. It's well beyond that. It could be upwards of like 1 to 30 or something. Yeah. I know teachers, they definitely deal with more students
1 to
than 13.
I'm like, wow, where can I put my kids in? That's a great ratio.
But what's the ratio of NYPD, like 1 police officer to how many in 9 million?
Yeah, but how many of those?
It's 236 people, 1 to 236. So who is doing more with less?
But not all 9 million are doing
right, of course.
At the same
but if you break it down purely by a numerical basis and financial basis, $6 billion budget compared to $24 billion, twice the manpower that we have, and way less people to police.
Again, apples and oranges. I don't think you can compare
and I don't
the two.
think like when he says that, it's a fair comparison. And then he goes on to talk about, oh well, the NYPD should be defunded because they spend like money on cool gadgets. I'm like, what cool gadgets are you talking about? Our body cam,
your iPad Pro.
My mobile
updated Tesla police car.
Yeah.
All jokes aside, it's just the cool gadgets, as in the militarized stuff that you guys may not need. It may seem really excessive.
Well, and that could be untrue. Like,
I think
we had Lex on.
That's what a lot. I think that's what the commenter
and he
was alluding to. I don't think he's alluding to your handgun.
Okay, so let me just address that. I was going to finish that thought. So the cool gadgets that I don't have an AR-15 hanging around in my trunk. I have a shield in my trunk. with some ballistic vests and ballistic helmets, which I need because God forbid we get a school shooting, right? I think that's necessary. I think it's fair to have that. So I don't think you can say that that's military gadgets or fancy gadgets. I have a cell phone that lets me do my job more efficiently because I don't have to wait on the radio dispatcher to give me a job. I can see it on my phone. I could do all that stuff on my own. I could take initiative. What else do I have? I got a taser and a body camera. That's about as much as I get in terms of fancy gadgets. And you know what about the taser and the body camera? Those are required from me because you, the public, wanted more transparency, body camera, and you wanted more non-lethal force options, a taser. Now, people say, people get this misconception that the NYPD is militarized. Like, how are we militarized? Because we have some units that have fancy equipment, like high rate of fire weapons. We need that. Well, remember 9/11? We forgot about that, right? Did we forget about that? You know what I mean? Like, so we have those for a reason.
Right. So does it make sense? I mean, obviously, being in NYC, it's always going to be high alert. We have to take consideration to that. But is it necessary to have that on a consistent basis? Because when Leslie was mentioning in the last podcast, he talked about how the additional budget that's not spent, it goes into these gadgets, and obviously it's not we're not talking about the entire police department. We're talking about a specific part of the police department.
Right. What people don't understand also, if they don't work within like a certain setting, sometimes they don't realize that the money that is allocated to you, it's use it or lose it. You forfeit that stuff.
That's true.
So sometimes
that's what a lot of companies do. Yeah, that's the way it operates.
It's like an FSA account. Yeah. It's use it or lose it.
And if you don't use that budget, then the way when they run their numbers, the accountants,
you don't need it.
They go, oh, you don't need it, so they give you a less budget the next year.
And then they're
so you have every incentive. Yeah. So you have every incentive to use up all that capital or the budget within that program. Because if you don't, they're going to give you less of it next year. They're going to say, oh, we're overfunding this. They don't really need it. Mm-hmm. That's the way they look at it, but they don't really drill down further. They just look on the surface of the numbers.
Right. It's nice to say, oh yeah, they're militarized. They spend on gadgets that they don't need. Well, I guess NYC isn't a terrorist target then, I guess. We shouldn't be prepared for that. We shouldn't be prepared for riots. Mm-hmm. I don't think of riot as like a very fancy piece of military equipment.
Right, but does it make sense to really look down at the programs and the resources and kind of look at does it make sense to reallocate those funds instead of to militarizing that unit of the police department?
Well, we need that unit,
right?
We need that.
We do for counterterrorism, but can we reallocate some of that funding to other programs, community resource and stuff like that in the police department? That's those units instead of going to the militarization of those units.
Well, we already have like a budget allocated to community affairs, right? We have.
Well, it's probably not very
precinct.
high.
I don't know the exact numbers, obviously. Yeah. And again, like the funding is sometimes use it or lose it. I don't know the specifics of how it works for NYPD. I'm not like the fiscal accountant or like...
Yeah, who's the CFO? Who's the CEO? We need to know who's accountable.
Whoever it is, I mean, they would know. They would be able to answer. And you could have put in a FOIL request if you really were so inclined to find out. Might take a while for them to get back to you, but...
I'm pretty sure.
I think it's very easy to say to reallocate it, but it's very hard to also like say, oh, well, this expense isn't justified, because you can always justify something. You can always justify something. It might not seem like to the layman, it's like, why do you need to spend X amount on military gear? Well, some of that military gear expires, right? Its useful life expires. You got to maintain it. All this stuff costs money. It's just, you can't just make it go away just because you want it to. So reallocating it's a tough job. Like, I don't envy the guy who has to balance the numbers.
Yeah.
And it's just, we can talk in circles about this all day and no one would ever be satisfied with the answers. I mean,
I don't think the conversation is to find answers and to satisfy everybody. It's about having that conversation, right?
And people don't want to have it. People don't want to have a full-length discussion because everyone like Will said is, and your last guest Lex, they mentioned it. Everyone wants to be on one side of the spectrum. You can't be in the center. Like you can't. Once you're in the center, you're like, oh well, you're against me, like this and that, and it's very hard to talk people out of like a certain pattern of thought. It's just hard, and you got guys like that Chow guy. I mentioned him earlier. Like he said, oh well, all cops should have malpractice insurance. Well, how much does malpractice insurance cost? Who's going to underwrite it? Tell me. Nobody can tell me that. I'll tell you how much malpractice insurance costs. For an NYPD officer, starting salary is $42,000, right?
Do doctors cover their own malpractice insurance?
Private doctors are required to maintain malpractice insurance.
Okay.
So here you go.
If you're working in a hospital.
So if you're in a hospital, the hospital might pay for you. But here's how much it costs a private pediatrician. It costs them $20,000 for malpractice insurance. A pediatrician. Internal medicine, $30,000 a year. And it goes up the riskier the skill profession is. Like if you're a surgeon or if you're like an anesthesiologist, well, guess what? Your premiums are through the roof. So you're going to tell me, like, I mean, it's not an apples to oranges comparison, obviously, doctors and cops. But if you're going to require a cop that is exposed to situations where physicality is involved and death is always on the table, how do you calculate the premium that cop needs to make? Let's say it is $20,000 a year. That's a little less than half of a starting cop's salary. You're telling them you can't have a shield and you can't have a gun unless you pony up $20,000 to pay for malpractice insurance. Who's going to want to be a cop? You're going to be working at a loss. You got to eat. You got to pay rent. You're going to be negative.
So what's the answer here? Like, I mean, it's not what the current system is not the perfect one, but is the one we have. And obviously the one that, now that you just itemized it and broke it down, it obviously it's not practical. So like, how do we proceed here then?
I mean, I really don't know how we proceed. I don't get paid to make those decisions. So thank goodness.
Do you think
it's unenviable? But just to go back on the malpractice insurance, like even if we were to get malpractice insurance for ourselves, the city still has to pay for insurance for us because we're considered city employees. Like people don't know this for some reason. Like if you want something, you might want to go research it and just kind of look into what it actually entails for us to get stuff like this. Like even at top pay, if you earn $100,000 as a cop, $85,000, whatever it is, that's still a substantial portion of your salary if it's $20,000 pre-tax. We got to pay other things, you know. We got to pay for uniform upkeep. We got to pay for our weapons maintenance. There's a lot of things that we have to pay for. People don't realize this.
So do you think...
And training.
There's obviously a major disconnect between the officers, what you guys go through, and public perception. Right. I mean, because a lot of it's now just for the most part, you guys make headlines when, for the most part, police officers make headlines when they do something wrong, when there's a drastic use of force, and then we go on the full offensive and say, I mean, there's people that say, and I hear people say, we need to tear the whole shit down and rebuild it. I don't think that's the answer. But I do think that at some point, we do need to build a bridge where it's neutral. And I know you touched on it where there's a lot of people that don't want to have that conversation, but we need people to understand that we need to have that conversation, which is why we also brought you on the podcast. I know Lex, we had him on the podcast. He seems to lean very far to the left. Kenny, we had him. He's a little bit more to the right.
Okay.
And I wanted to get, someone from the inside to actually talk about, because that's one of the things I hear people talk about what the police should be doing. But I was always in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, what does a police officer think they should be doing? Because they have a completely different perspective than what we have.
Right. And it's just, the whole process is just very exhausting. Like when you really sit down and you want to talk about it, you want to talk to people who lean a certain way about it. But it's very difficult. I mean, I don't know what the middle ground would be, but I think a big part of the solution, like to solve this, like, I guess, this huge chasm that exists between us and the public. I think it requires the public to do some soul searching themselves too. Like, how are we raising our kids? What are we teaching them? Like, what are we looking at? Like, how come everyone is so anti-police? Where are these attitudes coming from? And I get it. Sometimes you have a bad interaction with a police officer.
I personally, you touched it right there. Growing up, I had mostly bad interactions with police officers.
Okay.
And it wasn't because I was instigating anything, probably whatever. It's literally because if I'm like, for example, even all the way up into college, I would get pulled over and I did everything right, or I would get followed for several miles until the point where I forgot where I was going. Like, I'm constantly looking. I'm like, holy crap. Like, I make a left, he makes a left. I make a right, I make a right. And I feel like they're waiting for me to just do something.
Slip up.
Yeah, and I know that. I'm putting one and one together. He's not going exactly where I'm going. And I don't even know where I'm going anymore. Like, I'm so paranoid looking at this guy. And they go, oh, if you have nothing in your car, well, you have to be paranoid. Because I know that they could come by. Number one, I'm a broke college kid.
Right.
If you find a reason to give me a ticket, I can't afford that ticket. Now I have to choose between that and a meal. So that was tough for me. And I didn't have anything illegal during college. I'm just a college kid. Right. That's one. So when I was a kid, I would get, abused by cops. Yeah. Like, I was just walking and I had guns pull on me. And if I'm just hanging at the park with my friends, playing basketball, waiting for a friend, and, cops would come and abuse. I mean, and again, there was a lot of gangs in that area. So I could, I could say that's why probably they were assuming that we were probably all affiliated when it was just me and a bunch of kids playing basketball. Right. Several bad run-ins with police as a kid, but I also had several good run-ins with police officers. And I have friends that are police officers, and they're damn good people. I think at some point, though, we do need to meet in the middle and have a discussion, show more transparency. I think transparency here is key because I feel like police officers and the public are both very defensive right now. So you're both defensive, and now because of that, you're also on the offensive towards each other. And when we're both trying to take each other's eyes out, we're not able to see anything except for what we want to see as police officers or as a public of what we see police officers as. And I don't want to blanket it and say, well, the whole public hates us. And I don't want to blanket it and say all police officers are bad. I think we need to create that bridge where we can just meet in the middle, a safe zone where we could have this discussion.
Right. And we actually do have that kind of safe zone, like a program that's similar to that. But like I said, the solution is a multifaceted one. You have to have community people, you have to have them involved, and people have to take responsibility for their kids and raising them the right way. It definitely helps. Like, I'm not saying that people are just raising their kids wrong in general, but it doesn't help when you're telling your kid, hey, you did something wrong, I'm going to get the police to arrest you. Like, that's the worst. You're already creating a negative association right there, like, what the freak? Like, why are you villainizing us already? But just to go back to meeting in the middle, we have these programs like the Neighborhood Coordination Officer Program, where they host monthly meetings with the community. But the thing is, like, you can spread the word of mouth, but do people show up?
Right. So you think that would help? Because Kenny was a big advocate for that, where he said, if the community worked with the police, met with them more, talk to them.
We do this monthly. 4 times a month, in fact.
And it's always a low turnout.
It's always a low turnout. Like, I've been to these community meetings.
I think part of the low turnout is because it's not marketed.
It is marketed. We send out the flyers. We tell the community liaisons that we have to spread the word, either through churches, businesses. We spread these things. It's not that we don't. But
is it marketed in the right direction?
I mean,
it may be marketed to the people that are going, well, the police don't bother me, so I don't need to show up.
Well, here's the thing. Like, how do you effectively market it without people, like, kind of just crapping on it sometimes? Like, you could hand out flyers, right? You could post them up on stores. You could do it by word of mouth. People would just scoff at it or they'll rip off the flyer. You can't control that. You know what I mean? And sometimes people are just so busy that they just don't show up. But at these community board meetings, you get to voice your problems to the police. Like, what's going on in the neighborhood? Like, this is a very good way for us to understand what this section of the neighborhood needs. But sometimes the people who attend, they're not representative of that actual portion of the precinct. So I worked in that pretty heavy command. I'm not gonna say what it was, obviously, but it was busy. Like I had a very busy command: robberies, emotionally disturbed people, car crashes all day long.
Right.
And like the people who needed to come to these meetings, the people who live on the blocks where there are the most problems, they don't come. They don't come.
Is that because there's a fear, or is there?
It's a safe space. It's in a church.
Right. Do you think that it's been communicated to these communities?
They do know. It's not that they don't know. We spread the word. Our neighborhood coordination officers, they go out there and they post the flyers. They do what they can. Social media. It's up to people.
Do you think it would help if they actually did come out? Kenny was a big advocate of that. He thinks that would help dramatically.
I think it would help, but at the same time, like the people that turn out for these, they don't live in those problem areas. They don't live there. So
do you think the part of the problem is in the problematic areas, which a lot of people aren't discussing, should have some type of community leader, whether it's a gang member leader or it's someone that has a lot of influence within that block or that area, to come out to these and go, hey, look, this is what we need in our neighborhood. Even if it was a gang leader, you think in a way would he be kind of putting a target on his back? Or it's a safe space, but at the same time, he's kind of exposing himself.
Right. I mean, the cynical part of me would say that's pretty much a ludicrous suggestion, like for a gang member to like rally other people in that neighborhood to come, because
I'll use this as an example. Like for example, Snoop Dogg, Nipsey Hussle.
Okay, well,
they came out, met with the community, and they're known to be affiliated.
But they're big. They're big time. Right. Like they're hugely recognized.
Right.
Like these guys that if you were to say, oh, I'm gonna get a gang member liaison from this particular block to come to my community board meeting. It's, I don't know. It's just a really, really whatever, because he's going to find out if someone else from his neighborhood comes to that meeting and voices a complaint, it's a wrap for you.
Yeah.
Like snitches get stitches, right?
Yeah.
And it's true.
Well, snitching's cool now.
No, I don't know if it's that cool.
All right. I think 69 made it cool.
Guess what? That gang member, he could be like the lieutenant or the captain of that gang.
Right.
And guess what? He's going to make your life miserable in that block.
But
it's entirely possible.
What if it was like a Jedi mind trick? Where they're like, hey, I'm going to talk to the cops. We're going to try to get, I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough thing to navigate. It's tough.
Like I said, I'm not making fun of your suggestion, obviously. Like your examples with Snoop Dogg.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
This Snoop Dogg and these guys, they're like huge. So there's no basis for comparison. These small-time gang members.
But here's the thing, though. No. Look, a lot of these people in these neighborhoods, in their communities, they don't want police violence. They don't want police to interfere with what they're doing, especially when they're not committing a crime. I can tell you that that's for damn sure. And that's where the over-policing comes. So I think it is possible for leaders in the community, whether they're affiliated or not, to want to come and reach some dialogue with the police on how to improve the neighborhood by working together, at least create a bridge where it's not always as intense. Well, because at the same time, if you even if I was a gang member, let's say I'm a gang member and I live in this neighborhood, but I got my kids here. I got my grandmama here. I got, people I love here. And it's constantly like I'm walking, I got to worry about the police coming at me. I got to worry about, and I may not be doing anything wrong, but just because the police know me, or the police know that this part of the neighborhood, this block right here, if I'm walking it, I'm part of this group. Maybe I will talk to my guys or the people in the neighborhood. Go, hey, maybe it's not a bad idea. We're not snitching, but we're just telling the police, yo, relax, we're good here, and we're in a safe zone where we could create a dialogue. Like, yo, you don't got to be so intense. Like, look, as long as we keep it quiet, we agree to keep it quiet here. We won't. The killings, the murders, like you ain't gonna see that shit. We'll control it, right? And in return, you guys chill the fuck out. Stop coming at us so hard. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like,
So-
let's say if they could come to, would that ever be possible for the police? And if, let's say, a gang leader or community leader or whatever said, hey, whatever, and they may not be gang leaders, they could be a community leader, then like a old timer on the block that's well respected by the
like
gangs.
a church leader,
Yeah.
a leader in the community.
Or priest or whatever. Yeah. And they want to talk to the gang members. Hey, if you guys stop killing each other for a hot damn second, I could talk to the police officers. And then if the numbers are down, they can just chill out a bit.
Okay,
Can you agree to that?
So here's the thing. Like, we actually have meetings like that where we try to rope in these gang leaders into a meeting with like the captain of the
You
precinct.
said rope in.
Well, not okay. Well, maybe not rope in,
But yeah, I get what
we
you
try to
mean.
get them involved
Right.
to, resolve this issue of, everybody shooting each other or doing whatever it is that they're doing to each other to try to calm it down. But the thing is, like, even if you did all that, like if you told them, oh, hey, we need you to kind of help us with controlling the violence in your block,
Mm-hmm.
they might listen to you for a second. They might even abide for it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually somebody in a neighborhood that doesn't like them, they're going to call about them. Because those guys are probably apt to hang at the corner deli. And guess what? We have to respond. And how do you think the gang members are going to receive that? They're going to see it as, yo, man, we freaking listened to you. We came to a meeting. We heard you out.
Mm-hmm.
We did what we could. We kept it good here.
Mm-hmm.
And now you coming at us and bothering us again.
Someone breaks a treaty in some way.
No, it's not even someone. It's someone that lives on that block that doesn't like what's happening. And the thing is, you can't leave that block alone. Even if you got their word that, hey, we're going to keep things on the low here. We're going to keep it good. We're going to keep it quiet for you so you don't have to keep coming here.
Mm-hmm.
No.
No. You guys still have to patrol.
We still have to patrol.
But
we leave you alone.
But
we leave you alone.
But police
You're
doesn't
apt to do
patrol
something.
like that in the good areas. Why do you have to patrol all the time? Like,
Well,
I'm playing devil's advocate, okay?
Right.
Like in the nice areas, police, I see police patrolling, but it's not as drastic as in the other areas, high crime areas. But I obviously, like, listen to what I just said there. Police are patrolling more in high crime areas. That's a good thing.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that the high crime areas can reduce it to the point where the crime rate is lower, or it may be a lower income neighborhood, but if the crime rate can be reduced to the numbers that's satisfactory, would we even need that over policing? Is that even necessary? Or is there like, and I don't know, this has been rumored, but is there like a quota, especially for younger cops new to the force, do they need to show a lot of activity, a lot of ticket writing, a lot of arrests, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just going to create a demand? Because part of it's like, whenever I appeared in court,
Mm-hmm.
right, whether it's for a ticket, a violation or whatnot, and I'm pleading not guilty and I'm fighting my ticket or whatever. And every time I've been to court since, mostly because of college, and I'll tell you what, where I went to college, everyone I saw in court were all minorities. They were either Asians, Mexicans, blacks, or Hispanics. Like it was people of color.
Okay.
And maybe one white guy.
Okay.
Okay. And there were like a whole bunch of us in that room. So, and that's apparent here too.
Okay, if they get the numbers down, not the quota, I'll get into the quota part for the second in a second. Right. So even if they got the number down, like we still have to go somewhere. We have to justify our existence, right? So we still have to patrol, and it's always a perception thing, like whether or not we over police or we're just occupying or whatever. It's a perception thing. We have to go in circles, and like you said, you touched on it before, and we're gonna circle the problem blocks. We're gonna be there because we have to be there.
Right. But what if that problem my point is, what if that problem block was not a problem block anymore?
Well, how do you assess that?
If the numbers are down, there's no phone calls, there's no 911 calls, there's no killings, there's no murders. It's the people that are in that community said they policed themselves to the point where they said, look,
they wouldn't need us anymore.
We got to be low key.
Then they wouldn't need us anymore, and they would have free reign.
Not that they don't need you. Obviously, they'll need you guys as like an insurance,
right,
just in case something happens. But you guys don't constantly need to worry about your back and constantly having to look for something that's not there.
Well, the thing is, we have to patrol it. Like, if we gave them free reign to just, okay, well, we're going to leave you alone because crime is down here. Nothing's happening here. We did everything. You don't have to come here anymore. We can't.
I mean, aggressively.
That makes
Like,
sense
because
to me,
that
though.
creates.
No, that makes
because
sense
if-
to me.
yeah,
But what I'm
because-
saying is as aggressively.
as aggressively. But how can you kind of
How do you judge how
Judge-
aggressive
yeah.
like
Okay.
our patrols are? We're
Look-
gonna
look
go
at
around.
any good neighborhood. I see police patrolling.
good affluent?
But it's and like good schools, multi-million-dollar properties, et cetera, right? I see police patrolling, right? But it's there. No one feels worried about police presence in those neighborhoods. When they see a police officer, it's hey, how you doing? They move on. They keep it moving. Right. I'm sure you know that as well. Like certain guys got good neighborhoods where you're like, you're damn lucky. And then you got other folks in the high crime areas. It's a different. It's like, oh shit, man. Like you right away look at this person like like an enemy right over. Like you said, like they're raised to they have negative interactions with police officers. So now right away it's just like, and then so they're giving that energy off. The police is just gonna reinforce whatever they thought about the police. So it's just I'm right. I told y'all they were all assholes.
So here, I mean, I'll delve into the quota system since we touched upon like the interactions and everything too. So it's
because I always hear them. They always deny it. They always deny it, and I'm like, man, that's got to be a quota.
Well, I'll get in. I'll get into that.
You mean ticketing?
Yeah.
Just they have to show like activity. I feel the young cops.
I think that's already like
the older
kind of given.
it's
I know it's true.
It's always
There's
young.
a documentary that's done on it.
Really?
So
because there's always young cops that get at me.
Yeah,
it's not the older guys.
Okay, so
the older guys are just like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, hey, what's up? But the young guys, for example, one time I got pulled over. I literally just made a left at a green light. It wasn't anything, but it was in like Jamaica, Queens.
Mm-hmm.
It was in one of the lower income neighborhoods, and I never experienced this anywhere else except I always get fucked with when I go to these lower income neighborhoods, and I'm Asian, but it doesn't even matter. Like these guys look at me like I feel like they look at he's a minority. What is he? Or he's Asian. What is he doing here? And they're gonna pull me over, talk to me, and then when there's nothing on me, the guy I left with 4 tickets.
What the hell do you do?
And I plead not guilty to them all, but and the judge found me not guilty. I mean, I explained it to the judge. I was just like, I was super respectful. But what I'm saying is like, I was also respectful to the police officer, and there was a bunch of them on feet. And a guy pulled me over on feet.
Oh, so you got pulled over at a checkpoint, basically. Then.
It wasn't a checkpoint. These guys were just walking around.
Sounds like a checkpoint.
Maybe it wasn't, but I didn't. It wasn't like a typical checkpoint where I've been checkpoint before.
What are you talking about?
Where
There's a
for
station,
like sobriety
cop
and stuff like that. Usually on the weekends. But this was like my wife and I were just going to the gym.
I mean, I don't know.
I was driving through Jamaica because where we went to go get food, and there's a spot near Jamaica. Right. Queens that I like. So we went to go get food, and I was driving my way towards the gym through Jamaica, and then they pulled me over, and then they were like, the dude was desperately looking for something with his flashlight, his partner, and I felt like yo, that's fucked up what they're doing. It just something in me right here, it just didn't sit right. I really felt like they didn't give a fuck about my life, that they wanted to get their numbers up. That's what I saw. And they really didn't care about me. Like I was just another prick to them.
Okay, so you're just another number for them. So
but not even that, but I was just like a piece of meat. Like I wasn't shit to these guys.
Okay, so I'll cover that first part. I'll cover the first part first, and then we'll delve
4
into
tickets?
This. I don't know what you got the tickets for. I might have to look you up.
Yeah, look me up because
what the heck do you do?
Because you know what? The judge found me not guilty.
I'm not gonna look you up.
So you can look me up. I don't care.
Nah, I can't.
Lower his credit score.
Can't do it for personal.
Don't lower my credit score, man.
So you drew the distinction between a good neighborhood and a bad neighborhood, and how police patrol and
there's
all
a
that.
difference.
Well, here's the thing with bad neighborhoods and good patrol and good neighborhoods. I mean, I've had the fortune of actually being in a bad.
Oh, can you talk about quota before you jump into that?
I'll get into quotas. I'm sure you want to get into it, but
no. I want to know they always deny it, and I feel like
I'll let you know. So the good neighborhood and the bad neighborhood thing, like there definitely is a different vibe in how you police and everything. Part of it is like the training that you get sometimes, being tactically aware of your surroundings and considerations like when you do car stops or if you go into a building, you're going to do this, that, and the third before you actually enter. So the mindset in a community that is not as well off, like I would say that the people, and I'm not going to stereotype everybody, but the interactions that I've had, like let's say on car stops in the precinct that I started out at, which was a lot busier and lower income. My car interactions are all negative. I start off by saying, "Hello, sir. My name is blah blah blah. I stopped you because this." Is like, "What do you want, Dick Rider?"
No,
that's the first thing that comes out. You got to fill a quota. Here's my license and my registration. Go do your thing. Like that's the attitude I get, and it's not confined to just that one
and that's
interaction.
Just you said lower income neighborhoods usually more combative.
Yeah, they're just combative off the bat. And I'm not gonna say everybody, because there are some really, really nice people in like these neighborhoods that work hard. They do what they want to do. They want to feel protected, but you have this element that that's just very anti-police. And every interaction you have with them, regardless of whether it's good or not, it always like it's never enough. Like one time hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but
just don't name names.
Well, I'm not going to get in trouble for it because I'm just gonna say it. I saw an old guy. He's drinking a beer. In public. Okay. I could have given him a summons. Right. I saw he was an older dude. He was compliant. I was like, "Hey, what's in the bag?" He said, "It's alcohol, officer." And I was like, "Okay." I thought about it. I don't have the discretion to issue that ticket or not. And decided not to ticket him. I took the beer. I said, "Sir, I'm going to take this. I'm going to throw it out. And I would like for you to respect my authority. And I'm just going to ask you to go home." He complied. So the discretion
you're one
works.
of the good ones, man. I mean, I've seen officers like that too.
I mean,
that did just what you did before.
Yeah.
I've seen people publicly drinking, and the officers didn't overdose on anything. They were just like, "Hey, come on." Yeah. They were just enforcing the law, and they just made them spill everything.
Yeah. And I'm just
pour some out for the homies, and then just throw it away.
It's a $25 summons. Right. Like, he's an old dude. I'm not going to exercise. Like, I'm not going to give him a $25 ticket that he might not answer, and then he gets a warrant. Yeah. But that's my discretion. I could do it. I could definitely run him, warrant check, all that stuff. And I did. I actually did run him just to be sure on the safe side, because you never know who you got. Right.
I understand that. So, that makes sense to me.
Right. So I let him go, but then there's people, you give them discretion, like in the low income neighborhood that I worked at before I went to another precinct, like you give them discretion. Like, so I stopped this guy for running a red light. I get up to his car. "Hey, my name is whatever from whatever precinct. I stopped you because of this." Right off the bat, he's like, "I didn't run no red light."
That's already extra, because cops usually like come up and they don't say anything.
I know, and I'm like, I'm giving you everything up front, and you're giving me attitude, and this is the reason why I want to ticket you. You just gave me a reason to want to ticket you, and I'll see you in court. I'll gladly see you in court, traffic court, for that red light. Right. He ended up having a suspended license, so I arrested him. Oh, man. But why are you starting off combative? Like, there is no need for that. Like, I respectfully gave you the reason, my name, my badge number, everything, my precinct. I gave you everything you needed to know about me, and I gave you the infraction. But yet you still felt like you needed to be like a jerk.
I feel that it's a deeper rooted issue then. If it's like right off the bat is combative, there's that relationship that's established somehow in the past or whatever historically, and that's why this person is like, "Yo, I'm right off the bat. I'm gonna be like, I don't respect you," and that's the way I feel towards you, because due to some past indiscretion, whatever.
Right, and that goes to Will's question about tickets and seeing a lot of minorities at traffic court or whatever court you ended up at. Now, like, it is what it is. We have a job. This is part of what we do. And
how come it's always people of color though?
Well, the thing is, I don't know how.
I mean, everywhere.
Oh, okay. So
every time you telling me everybody of color that are like lawbreakers.
Yeah,
like,
and in his situation, he was being nice. So it's
not about nice.
Here's the thing,
and he's still like.
Here's the thing, like, it's the officer's discretion to exercise his ability to write a ticket. And I'll tell you, it's completely up to them.
If I were aggressive like that, if I was combative right off the bat, I would have got they would have dragged me out. I know that energy I felt right away. You can tell, like I've been in fights before,
Right.
and some people, they don't want it, and some people want it.
They're looking for it.
They're just like, please say something so I can fight you. Please get on my nerves, and that was like, when I got pulled over, I could tell right away. Because I said, excuse me, what am I being pulled over for? He was like, license registration. I was like, sure. And I gave him, what am I being pulled over for? And I could just see that scathing look. And he's looking at me like, all right, you just sitting there, like pretty much just shut up and be a good boy. I'm going to go run this.
Right. And I'm not going to deny that there are cops like that. Because I can't.
Those are the bad.
I can't
No, but check
legitimately
this out.
say that they're
When
bad
he was in
cops.
court one-on-one, not with his boys.
Yeah.
I think maybe he was putting on a show for the boys. I don't know. When it was just one-on-one,
Yeah.
I talked to him. Cool dude. I was like, man, I could have a beer with this guy. Like, we could just chill and have a beer. He was so cool. Like, literally, like, because I didn't give him negative energy in court.
Right.
I was just like, I was respectful for everything. And I was like, I kind of just want to get to know the human behind that. And we kind of just chatted for a good minute.
Yeah.
And then the judge asked him a question. And he says, did you check his blinker for this and this and that? And he was like, no.
Oh, so he had a reason to toss out the ticket then.
Of course,
'Cause
yeah.
that's how
The
they
judge.
toss it
That's why
out.
the
Yeah.
judge said, because he didn't have proof and he didn't check. And he answered the judge honestly.
Right. And
So then he tossed out my tickets. And then when I was walking towards the elevator or whatever, or the reception, or whatever, towards the same area as him, we were just kind of like just talking about regular shit.
Yeah.
And and I could feel that energy where we connected so easily. And I'm just like, man, this dude, like, he went from, like, that night, I felt like he couldn't give a fuck. He could put 2 bullets in my head. Like, he didn't give a fuck. He could have arrested me. He could have just ruined my life. Or that day at the courthouse, we just, like, it was all good. It was
Right.
like he was my boy. Like, I felt like an immediate connection. There was an immediate connection. And I was just like, that's crazy, man.
right. And the thing is, like, you might have caught him on a bad day. You might have caught him because he got yelled at by a supervisor for not, being as good a cop as he could be. Because we do get reviewed.
You mean as active as he should be?
Yeah, I mean, that's how we get measured. Like, people want to have a set of standards to evaluate us. So, like, how do you evaluate a cop as a sergeant, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to look at your cops, your platoon. You're going to look at, okay, this guy has, he's done this, that, and the third, right? So the easiest criteria to evaluate an officer on is, okay, how active are you in policing, enforcement activity, whether it's summonses or arrests? Like, that's an easy one. That's a very easy metric to get. Like, the hardest metric to get is how good are you at interacting with people in the community? Like, your social skills, your civility, humanity.
Mm-hmm.
That
Are those metrics even?
they are
accounted
metrics.
for?
They actually are. And there's also criteria for, like, okay,
I think that's great that they do that. I
Right.
didn't even know. That's
and
awesome.
so we have that. But I'm just saying, like, the summonses,
Yeah.
enforcement activity is the easiest criteria. It's a low hanging fruit.
Right.
Right. But the hard criteria is, does this officer know what is expected of him on a daily basis? Is there initiative? How does he interface with the community? Does he represent the department in a positive light? How are his interactions with the community?
See, I don't think most people know that. I didn't know
and
that.
they
I
don't
think
know.
that's beautiful
And you have
that they have that in place.
right, and we have this in place, but people rag on us like, oh, well, they should be evaluated constantly, like doctors and teachers, for example. But
Evaluated in what sense?
like, just your
Psychologically,
knowledge of, like, policing, your area of patrol. Do you know the conditions that are prevalent here?
I think that's valid, though.
These are all valid things. But here's how people don't understand. Like, a sergeant is assigned, like, X amount of cops, and he can't constantly follow every single cop to see if they're doing the right thing. He can't go to a job.
So he can't micromanage.
He can't
every
micromanage.
single.
Doctors and teachers, they can be micromanaged, because if you're a resident in a hospital, right, you're always getting tested, orally tested by the senior guy or whatever. You're getting tested on how much you know. You're getting evaluated based on your interaction with patients. At the teacher side, you have people sitting in on your lesson plans, right? There's constant reviews. You have parent-teacher conferences that review you. So, a sergeant is not going to follow you everywhere and micromanage you and go to your job. Like, let's say you go to a domestic violence job. You handled it. Then your sergeant comes over. do you honestly expect him to prioritize interviewing the person you just interviewed to see if you did a good job? Like, was this officer civil to you? Like, did he answer everything that was of concern for you? Like,
but you guys have body cam now, can't they? Just
we have body
review
cams,
the footage.
we don't always turn them on for certain situations because, let's face it, it costs money. Storage costs money, and so they have guidelines on when you activate the camera and when you don't.
Probably like on a high stressful situation where it's like it might be altercation.
A crime in progress, for example, or like a domestic violence job where there's violence involved. Like, we have to turn it on, right? We're not going to turn it on for like something like, oh, stray dog.
How about a domestic abuse call, like, or something like that?
If it comes over a certain way, if it's just a dispute, like, we don't necessarily have to turn it on. Like, if you want to protect yourself, you can. But it's discretionary. But just to go back to that whole point, like, well, yeah, we do get measured, but is a sergeant really going to find all these instances where they can catch you doing something? Like, they can track your car, they can do all sorts of things. So
typically, what does a sergeant want from their team?
So going back to, I guess, the quota part, like, that's the low hanging fruit. So if you see like a sergeant, his job isn't easy. Like, he has to evaluate us. So the low hanging fruit is, obviously enforcement. So, I mean, everybody grades things differently. So I'm not going to say one sergeant prioritizes like summonses more or arrests more than another sergeant because I don't know how they do it. Everybody's mind works differently. So typically
most sergeants, are they looking for that low-hanging fruit? Are they looking for police officer activities, how many arrests you made?
They have to look at it.
How much contact? But is that how they gauge? Is that like 80% of how, if I'm a sergeant, for example, is that how, or if you're a sergeant looking at me, is that how you'll gauge my performance on the job? What weighs the most is how much arrests I have made and tickets I've handed out?
Right. It's part of it. It's definitely a part of it. I'm
not going to deny like 80%? Is that the?
I'm not going to say it's 80%.
But does it weigh the most?
It doesn't weigh the most. I'm not going to say it weighs the most because it makes up for a minority of the questions on the evaluation. So, I mean, you could dispute that. Obviously, we can agree to disagree.
So, is that at the sergeant's, depending on the sergeant's discretion, which category they feel that is most important? Engaging.
Well, here's the problem with like saying that. Here's the problem with saying that. You could have a really active enforcer for an officer. Let's say Norm's an officer. He writes like a gazillion tickets and he makes like,
I'm super active.
Yeah,
I'm a brute.
Super active.
He's a good money maker.
I'm a brute.
You are a terrible person.
Yes.
You have no civility towards people.
That's why I'm so active.
Right.
Usually.
And so do I measure you just on your activity? No, I can't. Objectively, as a sergeant myself, if I was a sergeant, right? I wouldn't evaluate you just on the fact that, oh man, you're like my gold star guy. Like, I'm going to look at how you handle people too, because I'm not going to, you go to a domestic violence job and you piss these people off even more. Let's say, oh man, I agree with your husband. You are a bitch. Like, and then something happens.
That'll be hilarious.
Think about it. Like, how does that reflect on the department, right?
Yeah.
Officer Norman, he doesn't do a good job of conveying the professionalism of this department. So therefore I have to mark him down. Right. His social interaction, like, okay, well, does he interact with community? Well, if he's constantly writing summonses and arresting people, he's probably not doing that much interaction, right? So how do I gauge him on that? So I'm gonna have to talk to him, right? There's other metrics, like, do you know the conditions? If you're constantly writing tickets or arresting for frivolous things, let's say well, not frivolous, but let's say a low-level infraction, you're just bringing people for marijuana smoking constantly, when that was a thing, that's all you did, and you just wrote like red light summonses all the time. Well, guess what? I mean, I can't really objectively measure you on that, right? Right. So I'm going to have to interview you, dig a little deeper. So, and just to go on the quota thing, like, yes, I mean, if I wanted to have better ratings, I'm going to write more because it's part of my evaluation. But it's not a quota system because I'm doing it for myself. I need to show that, hey, I'm doing my job out here.
So if you want to get promoted, you want to show that you have a lot of activity.
Well, to get promoted is just a civil service exam, unless you want to be a detective.